All right, good afternoon, everybody. Could we have everyone take their seats, please? We got some open seats in a couple different pockets here. Well, I want to offer an official welcome and say thank you for being here today. Thank you for carving out time for the important endeavor here at the University of San Diego. My name is Rick Virgin. I'm Vice President for Advancement here at the University of San Diego. Delighted to be here and joined today. Dean Tim Keene, just so you know, you're getting the number 2 or number 3 fill in here. Dean Tim Keene was supposed to offer an official welcome and was not feeling well, feeling like he had a fever, and so decided best not to be here. So we congratulate him on that. So we're all grateful for that. And I want to kick off this afternoon just by talking about how excited we are to have the 40th, that's 40, 40th Annual Economic Roundtable here at the University of San Diego. The University of San Diego is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year. We've been at the Economic Roundtable business for 40 years, okay? So it's very exciting. 4 decades of collaboration and organizing what we believe is the largest free economic outlook event for the region between University of San Diego, the County of San Diego, and Workforce Partnership. We're also proud to welcome the addition of the San Diego Foundation's Policy and Innovation Center as a partner this year as well. So thank you very much. We're also beyond thrilled to have Mary Daly with us today, and just got a chance to speak with Mary just a few minutes ago. We were having a moment actually talking about if you're ever feeling stressed out about the world, the political, economic situation, stuff at home, whatever it is, come and spend time with our students here at the University of San Diego, and you will immediately have your frame of mind changed. You will feel optimistic, you will feel good about the world, and you will feel good about the future. Mary is here to join us celebrating the 40th anniversary with this community event. And also want to give a shout out to our impressive panel, Jerry Sanders, Carol Kim, and Kyra Green, who are joining us this afternoon, so thank you very much. We're also extremely grateful for our presenting sponsor, C3 Bank. And we have AJ Moyer here who's representing. C3 Bank, we have a partnership with C3 Bank, and they have hired our students. They have had internships for our students. They have USD students and alumni as customers of the bank. I'm also going to give a quick shout out to C3 Bank. One of their partner affiliated businesses is ABP Realty. C3 Bank and ABP Realty support student scholarships here at the University of San Diego, and particularly for the Knauss School of Business and the Burnham Moores Real Estate Center. And so for that, we say thank you very much. So, AJ Moyer is president of C3 Bank and a USD grad. From 2001, got a bachelor's of accountancy. AJ is a CPA with over 13 years of experience in financial planning and analysis, and he hates when I do this. AJ was also valedictorian of his class, so that may be the last time I do that. So we like to brag on AJ because he exemplifies what USD grads go out and do in the world. They are excellent members of the community. They help create jobs. They help build up families and help others who are on the fringes of society who need our help and support. And they exemplify what is best about the University of San Diego in terms of building up this region and providing some of the best graduates in the world that we have to offer, and go out and help throughout the state of California, throughout the country, and beyond our borders. And AJ is an excellent example of how we do that here. So we are proud and humbled to have him, and so I'd like to call AJ up to the stage. So thank you very much.
Wow, I was not expecting those remarks, so my quick words aren't going to come close to that. And it's not very often I write down some words to say, and Tim not showing up today really messed up my speech because the first thing I started with was thank you, Tim, and now it's thank you, Rick. So I'm not writing down words anymore. But as Rick said, I'm the president and CEO of C3 Bank, and just really happy to be here. Congratulations to USD and all the partners for the 40th annual. Again, I'm very proud of the fact that this information is here for all of us to share. I'm a big believer in economic data being a baseline for personal and business decisions. And although it's always hard to predict the future, it's great for discussion and to have that baseline as you move forward in your business. For those that don't know us at C3 Bank, we ourselves are going to celebrate a milestone this year. We'll be 10 years in business. And we're very passionate about growing San Diego and investing in San Diego. We have to date done $1.3 billion worth of loans, most of which has been in the San Diego County to help infrastructure, job growth, and development. We're very focused on helping the small and medium-sized businesses in our county and supporting them day to day, and we know that's kind of the lifeblood of the workforce here as well. We have a lot of fun. We are a small private bank, makes us nimble and different, and half of our ownership group is USD alumni, which we're very proud about. So with that being said, I just happy to continue to support the conference and happy to have all you here. Look forward to a really healthy discussion. And with that, I'd like to welcome Chairwoman Nora Vargas from the San Diego County Board of Supervisors.
Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes. Happy Friday. Are you excited? I mean, we're talking about business, economy, all cool stuff, how we're going to make this region better. So I want to tell you that it's been a wonderful morning for me. I mean, I'm going to take a point of privilege and let you know that this morning I got to welcome a whole bunch of Californians to the announcement that Tony Atkins is running for governor. So it was a really cool morning for me. When I got out there, I was like, whoa. But it was exciting because I think it brought together a lot of different folks, that I think when I was thinking about it and coming here, I thought about really what is the power of San Diego, which is that ability for business, unions, academia, nonprofits, and community to come together to really think about how we thrive, how we really create innovation, and how we do great work so that our communities can be healthier and stronger. And to me, that is like the most amazing thing. And to be able to serve as the chair of the Board of Supervisors and watch this like on the front line is just super exciting. So I'm really, really happy to be here. I want to say congratulations. When I looked at Kira and I was like, wait, 40 years? Really? That long? And we were babies when you all started, but excited to be here. Yeah. Excited to be here about to be able to welcome you and to see the fact that all of you are working together and really thinking about what innovation and economic growth looks like for San Diegans. And so I'm honored that the County of San Diego gets to continue to be a partner. We're going to continue to be committed to this process and being part of this. I want to make sure that I take a moment and say welcome to Mary Daly from the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank. We are so happy to see you and to be here. And I already heard from Tony that you have all sorts of wonderful ideas, and so I'm excited about the work that we'll do together. I also want to thank the partners from not only UCSD, the Workforce Partnership, C3 and the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center for being part of this innovative conference. To me, as the chair of the County Board of Supervisors, when I share this with folks, people ask me, well, what does a supervisor do? And they're like, oh, you're a supervisor. Oh, that's cool. So what do you supervise? And I don't know how many of you knew what a county supervisor was before COVID, be honest, right? And so let's be real. We saved you. Anyway, so I had to say that because I was the vice chair of the committee. So anyway, I have to take a little bit of credit for it. But, the County of San Diego is, I have the honor of representing, it was 3.3 million people. We are the second largest county in the state of California. We have a budget of about $8.1 billion. And we have 20,000 employees. that wake up every day to try to do everything they can to make sure that people's lives are better. We are the safety net of our community. And so it makes me so proud to be able to be here today and to say thank you for really thinking today about outside the box, really thinking about innovation and thinking how we work. Because, from the first day that I got elected, we were doing the work, particularly around making sure we kept our community safe and healthy. But we understand firsthand how the pandemic really impacted our communities. We know that although the small businesses continue to be the backbone of our region and our economy, they were very much hurt by the pandemic. And one of the groups that was mostly impacted was women, particularly women of color. And so for me, it's been really thinking about what is it that we can do as San Diegans and as a county to make sure we continue to invest so that we can take it to the next level. So I'll tell you that as a county, we've invested over $30 million in small business grants. And the reason why that's important is because we're investing in the community without asking anything but making sure that they continue to thrive and that these small businesses have what they need to be able to succeed. And more importantly, continue to have their employees be a part of the fabric of this community. For me, it was really important as we were looking at this work, sort of where do we fit into the bigger picture of the economy as a county? And one of the things that I did was champion the creation of the Office of Economic Prosperity and Community Development. And it was important for me to create this office because I heard loud and clear that there needed to be one, that regional perspective to bring people together. And it was being done before, but we needed to come together because it's only together that we're able to ask for the dollars that we deserve from the federal and state government to make sure that we are investing in our local communities. And so I'm really excited about the creation of this office and the work that we've been doing. We've prioritized economic development strategy as a county, and we're leveraging the support that we can get. I think all of you know this, but in San Diego, 59% of all businesses have less than 5 employees, and 75% have fewer than 10. And so this office is going to really focus on collaborating with different entities to make sure that we promote small businesses and entrepreneurship in the county. And when I say that, I'm not just saying it because we cut a ribbon or we did a board letter and then it happens. For me, what's really important is that when I say that government must work for all and not just for some, is we have to put ourselves in people's, stories and figure out what they need from us. And so I was really, really proud that we were able to take action. And I think some of you have heard this because this innovation came specifically from COVID, right? During COVID, I think all of you remember how many of you bought cookies from people, how many of you bought cakes. Some members of our community started making empanadas, tamales, all sorts of different things to be able to survive, just to survive. And from that, we were able to take that work and we created a policy based on work that the state of California had done, and we created the MICOS program. I don't know how many of you have heard of the MICOS program. And the MICOS program is the Micro Enterprise Home Kitchen Operations Program. We have now businesses, small businesses in our communities that came from, making tamales, empanadas, tostadas, cakes, and all sorts of really cool stuff. And now they're selling them from their homes. And we're doing this, making sure that people are healthy, they're safe. They now have, they're able to go through the county and they get a certificate and all these wonderful things because it's laying the foundation for folks. So those that want to continue on and get a bricks and mortar and actually have their restaurants, which some of them are able to get their feet wet in the process and be able to do it. And then others are actually able to continue to do the work that they're doing because they're supplementing the income for their families. That's the kind of innovation that we need to be doing here in San Diego County so that our communities can not just survive but also thrive. And so I'm excited about that. The other thing that we heard loud and clear from folks is that we need childcare. Childcare needs to be a part of the bigger economic perspective. Yes, you can clap, it's a big deal. Childcare needs to be at the core of how we make sure that this is not a woman's issue, this is a family issue, this is a community issue, this is an issue that we need to be thinking about regionally so that our communities can thrive. And so we actually were able to do a blueprint, and as a result of the blueprint, we are now working together to make sure that we are integrating, childcare as part of our economic workforce, and really, it's one of my top priorities. And as I said to folks, there's a couple of ways of looking at this, right? It's not just making sure that your child, and it's one of the most important things, your child is safe and in a place where they're being, they're being developed and they have all the tools that they need. But then the other component of it is you have folks creating small businesses, right? And in partnership with academia, like Southwestern College, and organizations like the Chicano Federation, they've come together and they are able to build entrepreneurs in this field. And that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing here in San Diego to be able to move forward. So those are just some of the things that we're doing. But I would be remiss if I don't touch upon something that's very important for me, is parte de mi corazón, right? I think most of you know I was born and raised in Tijuana. So being fronteriza is very important to me because one of the things that we can't forget when we're talking about business is the power of our binational region and who we are. There's 7 million of us together in the Cali Baja region. The amount of economic impact that we have in this region is over $20 billion to the San Diego County, to San Diego in projection every year. There's a value of trade of San Diego makes about $4 billion per year. And I think the thing that I remind people, there's over 50,000 people who cross that border every day to work. Over $50,000. So that's why Ped West being open should matter to everybody in this room. That's why the border wait being more than 3 hours every day should matter to everybody here, because this is really part of our economic engine, and we need to do the best that we can to make sure that everyone who's here is able to go back and forth and continue to impact our economy the way that they do. And so I said to you, we are the second largest county in the state of California. I do believe that we have a responsibility to ensure that government, business, academia, and all of us come together, nonprofits, and that we're innovative and we become champions for the work that we need to do. And so I'm really, really excited about your day today. I'm going to challenge you to be innovative, to think outside the box. And as I say to my team, not just my small group of team that works for me every day, but to the county team that we work with every day, no is not an option, right? We need to think outside the box, and we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we're innovative and that we're creative so that our communities can really thrive. And so today, I'm excited that you get to hear from one of the folks who has done amazing things in the county of San Diego. He did it when he was a council member. He's done it as a nonprofit leader, really investing in the future of our youth. And having now Tony Young be the interim president and CEO of the San Diego Workforce Partnership, I think is really, really something powerful for us as a community. We were supposed to meet for 10 minutes about a couple of weeks ago, right? And then before the holidays. And that 15 minutes turned into over an hour, and we have a list of action items of things that we're going to do together, because we're going to make sure that we're investing in our youth, we're going to make sure that we're partnering to work together, but more importantly, we're going to continue to do everything that we can so that the communities of San Diego County have the best opportunity to have the best quality of life. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, productive session. And with that, I introduce one of my good friends, Mr. Tony Young.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. And specifically, I have a lot of appreciation for Supervisor Vargas. I used to work at the Board of Supervisors, and this is not my grandfather's or your grandfather's Board of Supervisors. I will guarantee you that. That's the type of leadership that we need, and we appreciate you being at our annual Economic Roundtable. All of our partners, I do appreciate you being here, and all your unwavering commitment to this collaborative effort. As the interim president and CEO of the San Diego Workforce Partnership, I stand before you with determination and gratitude. Today is not just a milestone, it is a celebration of 40 years of fostering economic dialogue and progress in our vibrant community. The San Diego Workforce Partnership collaborates with businesses, community-based organizations, elected officials, and funders to empower job seekers and employers. and we're honored to have Mary Daly, the distinguished president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, here to enlighten us on her expertise. Alongside her is Daniel Innemark, the chief economist of SD PIC, engaging in a fireside chat about the future of our economy. In 2024, we stand at a pivotal moment. Now is the time for business, government, and community leaders to unite, uplifting all San Diegans and constructing an equitable, resilient workforce. Our focus is clear: access to skills, jobs, and careers that promote self-sufficiency. Over the past 6 months, the San Diego Workforce Partnership has prioritized cultivating partnerships between employers, educators, and job training professionals, securing more than $9 million to invest in sustainable employment opportunities for the more than 30,000 San Diego residents that we serve annually. Yet over 200,000 residents still unemployed are walking the streets every day. Our work is far from finished. When we support one another, our economy thrives and San Diego succeeds. And I'm delighted to welcome Daniel Innemark and Mary Daly for a captivating conversation about the economic future that lies ahead. Your presence here today reflects the commitment needed to drive this change, and thank you very much for you being here. Let's start this journey together toward a more prosperous San Diego for everyone. And as a representative from the Workforce Partnership, I appreciate all of you all as we move forward today. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much for being here.
Move this. Can everybody hear me? I could go on and on about Mary Daly, but I'll just say this. A year ago, Lauren and I were talking, and I said, you know who my absolute dream guest for the 40th Annual Economic Roundtable would be? It's Mary Daly. And this feels like a dream come true, and I'm just so thrilled to be sitting here with you and having this opportunity to talk with you.
Well, thank you so much. That's extremely flattering. I really appreciate it. And I actually feel like, oh, wow, I've already accomplished part of my bucket list. Make a dream come true, and it's only January. So I'm already in. So I'm check. I'm
Absolutely.
in good shape. Hopefully the year goes well.
All right, so let's just jump into it.
Sure, absolutely.
First, I'd love to hear, and I think we'd all love to hear, your outlook for the economy. You know, what are the takeaways, the key takeaways from 2023? What's your forecast for 2024?
Absolutely. So let me start with 2023. So remember, we began the year last year with high inflation and a booming labor market, and we were tightening policy at a rapid clip. And the conversation then was, will the Fed's tightening cycle fail and inflation will just completely never come back down, or will we have a recession? And that was the context. And the sentiment was pretty low, despite the fact that the economy was booming. And I would go out and do CEO roundtables, community talks, and what I'd hear is, it's too frothy, it's unsustainable. I had visuals given to me. One gentleman said, I feel like I'm riding a bike when I was a kid, and I've lost the pedals. You know, those bikes where you lose the pedals and it's just going down the hill and there's nothing you can do and you just hope for the best and hang on. And then another young man who I met at a local retail outlet, he was there with his wife and 2 kids, and they were there on a Sunday shopping. And he said, and I'm asking him questions, don't identify what I do for a living, but I told him I was an economist, and I'm interested in how people are experiencing the economy. And he said, I feel like I'm on a treadmill. I'm on a treadmill because I'm making more money than I've ever made. I'm working 2 or 3 jobs. I have no more hours in the day. And when I come here to buy groceries, there's less and less in my cart, and I'm spending more and more of my income. And he said, I can't keep this up. I want to do better. What can I do? And I told this young man, which was a heartfelt rendering he was giving me about his life, I said, I'm working on it. It's going to take some time. Keep at it. Now, I don't know what happened to that young man, but I do know what happened to the economy. Throughout 2023, we, even with the banking stresses, which gave us another negative we had to work through, we end the year, ends 23, with inflation much, much lower. People not yet, we're not there yet, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but it's much, much lower, and American families and businesses and communities are feeling a relief from that high inflation stress. We also ended with the economy starting to slow, so it looks like that froth is gone. And that froth being gone actually helps people feel like, okay, now I can get a foothold and I get a plan. So now where are we today in 2024, and where do I see us going? Well, I'm going to start with a couple of things. The economy is in a really good place. If you saw the sentiment numbers, the confidence numbers this week that come from the various surveys, people feel better. There was last month a vibe session. That was the last thing I was hearing about. Kyla Scanlon taught me this. She's an influencer, a journalistic person who does a lot of TikTok and things, and she tells me, oh, it's a vibe session. People feel bad, the data are good, it's a bad vibe. And that was 6 months ago, and I think, okay, I'm listening. But now I'm seeing sentiment data and confidence data be better. When I had a business roundtable here in San Diego this morning, what did I hear? Cautious optimism. I'm seeing an economy that is responding to monetary policy and coming into balance and inflation coming down, but not falling off the cliff and making a worrisome situation, and that's good. The second thing that I feel is in a good place is policy. Policy's in a good place. We got policy rate adjusted so it can do its work. We see that it is having an influence. And so now we're in a great place in the following situation. We know that policy's in a good place, the economy's in a good place, and we can start to be more patient to see what we need as a Fed to do next. The other thing that we can do is we can take a deep breath, and we can say, what are the important work we need to do as communities, as people, as businesses, to plan for our future. And that's the second thing I heard in the roundtable this morning that I really wanted to share, is that we had a lot of conversations about things that we were going to do to build our future forward. When I was at CEO roundtables last year, I only heard about inflation and how hard it was to hire anybody. Now I'm hearing, well, what about workforce housing? What about education? What about making our communities strong and vibrant and building an ecosystem? So, you know, I'm optimistic by nature, but I always tether myself to evidence. I am an evidence-based optimist. And I would say that the economy and the situation looks brighter than it did at the beginning of last year. There is a lot of work to do. There's no denying it. And I'm going to do my part at the Fed, but it's a lot of work to do for all of us to really get to where we want to be. But we're starting from a better place, for sure. I hope that helps.
That helps a lot. For those who might not be familiar, President Daly, in addition to being president and CEO of the San Francisco Fed, is also one of 12 voting members of the Federal Open Market Committee, which arguably makes her one of the 12 most influential economic policymakers in the world. The FOMC kind of sets interest rates, and so that has a huge impact on our economy. And you, as part of that, have a kind of a dual mandate, right? One is to keep inflation low, and the other is to maintain full employment, or to keep unemployment low. When you look at the year ahead, which one of those seems more daunting, or which one seems more like a risk, or which, clearly in 2023, your focus was inflation? What do you see when you see?
Oh, that's a great question. So you're right, we have what we call the dual mandate. If you follow the Fed, you've heard about the dual mandate, full employment, price stability. If you're ever talking to people in your friends and family, we explain it this way when, you know, people aren't Fed followers necessarily, is that everyone who wants a job can have one. That's full employment, and the dollar in your pocket or your wallet holds its value. That's price stability. So For us, last year, inflation was so far above our target, and the labor market was booming. As I said, firms were telling us they couldn't find workers, and workers were telling us they could have every job they wanted. So that was an economy where our only focus to achieve our goals needed to be inflation. And so we had that in mind, vigilance and resolute commitment to getting inflation down. At this point, with the economy in a good place, the risks more balanced, and the policy in a good place, what's happened is that dual mandate is back in a collective lens, right? I'm looking at both. Because what I want to do is I want to make sure that we deliver on low inflation, but do it without taking jobs by making the unemployment rate rise. So I would say that we're balancing those goals at this point. The risks to the economy are balanced, and the risks to both sides of our mandate are balanced. So we don't want to loosen policy too quickly, only to find that inflation gets stuck at way above target. That would be a miss. That would be a very scarring miss. And we don't want to try to get to 2 so quickly, like overnight, just to get that squeezed out, that we end up having this big run up in the unemployment rate, and then we've solved one problem for people, we've brought inflation down, but we've given them another problem, we've taken their jobs. That is not a soft landing, in case you're wondering. And we want definitely to, just in case you don't know, but we definitely want, and it's because a soft landing is more. I mean, the reason I spend so much time talking to people is because to really understand what a soft landing means, you have to look at the eyes of people who want 2 things. You have to think of that gentleman I met in Walmart. Well, I shouldn't have said that. That gentleman I met at the large retail outlet. You have to think about that, and you have to think about that gentleman. And if we end up having an economy that delivers on 2% inflation and takes away jobs, we haven't made him any better off. In fact, maybe worse off. And so that's the commitment to the dual mandate, and I think both of those goals are in balance.
Yeah, speaking of the soft landing, that's all we heard last year. Was, are they going to achieve the soft landing? The window for a soft landing is getting narrower and narrower. And then all of a sudden people are saying, oh, it's immaculate disinflation. You pulled it off, you did this incredible, you did the impossible. Do you feel like you've achieved the soft landing, or is there continuing risk?
No,
okay.
no. So if anybody asks, the golden chalice is not yet ours, right? We do not declare victory. I think it's very important, and I mean this with all seriousness. There's a cost to declaring victory too soon. There's so many costs, but say there's victory. Well, then what we could end up with is inflation getting stuck at 3.9%, which is what it just printed, right? That's not price stability. 3.9% is not price stability. 2% is our target for price stability. So there's a gap. That's a 1.9 percentage point gap. There's a lot of work to do there. That doesn't mean that we don't have the tools or not getting closer. We are definitely getting closer. Look at all the progress we made last year. It just means we have to stick with it. We have to continue to work on it, and we have to do that in a different way than we did last year, because this year we also have to keep our eyes on the labor market, which is starting to slow. And so we have to calibrate very carefully to ensure that we continue to bring inflation down, and we ensure that we do it gently as we possibly can. So I say that the job is really one about calibration this year. What does it take? It takes patience. It takes gradualism. There's this term used in monetary policy. Ben Bernanke wrote a speech about it called gradualism. And the gradualism just means you take the time to look. You're facing a lot of uncertainty. You make sure you really get a look at the data, you look at it, you study it, you do it twice, 3 times, and then you take action. Because if you're quick to act, you can actually make mistakes. And mistakes aren't just things that they'll write about in history books. They're things that affect people, their lives and livelihoods.
You mentioned that we haven't yet achieved that 2% price stability or 2% inflation rate. What's keeping it elevated right now? Why is it 3.9 versus 2?
Oh, that's a great question. So, and I love detailed questions like that. I'm an economist by training, so who doesn't want to talk about the composition of inflation? Probably you, but I'm going to talk about it anyway to make it fun. And you can tell me, I'll ask for a show of hands, is it really fun? Okay, so really, it's actually very interesting and extraordinarily useful in the post-pandemic management of the high inflation. It's quite a bit different than how it's historically been. So pandemic comes, as we all know, and it basically shuts down the economy. And when it shuts down the economy, it simply destroys supply chains across the globe. It stymies demand, but then quickly two things happen. Federal relief comes in and supports families who didn't have incomes, and the rest of us who did have incomes because we kept our jobs just went home and worked. And then we massed up in piles of savings that we didn't ordinarily have because we had nowhere to go. And we did drain off some of those savings by going online and spending an enormous amount of time buying things, physical things, bicycles, stationary bikes, TVs, headphones, so when we're all fighting over the TV, you know, everybody has their own headphones, Zoom equipment. I mean, in my family, we bought a lot of stuff, as did every other American family, right? Everybody bought a lot of stuff. And what was interesting is the switch of our spending as Americans, the pattern of our spending, it shifted quite dramatically away from services and to things, to goods. That is very unusual. 2/3 of spending is on services and only a third on goods. That shifted, half and half. Okay, so then what does that mean? Well, that means that demand for goods, things, is growing rapidly while supply of things is completely faltered. And that's inflationary. So goods price inflation shot up. We've been used to computer prices falling, bicycle prices falling, TV prices falling, even car prices falling. Those things all rose in price while that was happening. Okay, so that's thing one. Second thing that happened, huh?
The microphone a little closer.
Oh, sorry, guys. Second thing that happened, I couldn't tell. It's sort of, I have no idea what I'm doing, so, with the microphone. With the microphone. I'm very, very capable at monetary policy. Just being clear. Okay, back to it. So goods price inflation rises rapidly. The second thing that happens is that people, and this is really important, people want bigger houses. They want a lot of housing. Now they have money, so they go out and they're buying houses hand over fist. Housing prices are going up, so that boosts housing price inflation and rental price inflation as people move out of cities and they move into bigger areas where they feel like they have more outdoor space or just bigger environments because it's the pandemic. So that's happening. And then the third thing that happens is that labor, people working, especially in in-person settings, people are afraid. They don't want to come to work, and it's challenging. And so all of those workers, many of them just simply leave the labor force. They retire if they're older, they simply leave and go home if they're not, and that leaves a big hole in the labor force. That happens at the same time that demand for lower wage workers has gone up because we have all these need for Amazon drivers and you know, all the delivery services that we're getting to our home, food delivery, goods delivery. And so this is just a big imbalance between demand and supply. And both of those things in housing and in services other than housing, that completely boosts core services inflation. So then we end up with core services inflation high, core goods inflation high, and an economy that is growing and there's no sign of relief. So we raise the interest rate, and what happens is while we're raising the interest rate to get the demand side of this back in balance, the supply chains also recover. So now last year what we had is goods price inflation came down, largely because the supply of goods started to come back through. Shipping improved, factories opened, the supply chains recovered, goods price inflation come down. At the same time, demand for goods started to wane and people shifted back over to services. And what's happening is more workers are coming to work now. Wages have been rising, attracts people into the labor market, and the Fed's raised interest rates. And so people are, just demand is in general slowing. So right now, two things are happening. Goods price inflation is coming down and services price inflation is coming down, both for housing and also for these other services. And that is, while others may call it an immaculate disinflation, I call it a purposeful march towards the normalization that comes from the post-pandemic supply chain recovery and the normal way that Fed policy rates work. You raise interest rates, demand slows.
Not quite as catchy of a name as immaculate disinflation.
Well, you know, when you're a
I like
policymaker,
it.
if you look for a catchy name, you're typically going to be too narrow in your thinking and you'd be wrong. So I'll leave that to the media guys who dream those things up. But it is catchy, immaculate disinflation. It just isn't immaculate. It was purposeful.
So you wrote a great paper called The Economic Gains from Equity. And for the nerds in the audience, I encourage you to go read this paper. I'd love to hear from you. Why should we care about racial equity? And what can we do to address it?
So let me say that when gaps in groups, whether it's race, ethnicity, gender, rural, urban, any location, you can look at gaps between people who are first-generation college students and other college graduates. You can think of so many places where there's gaps in opportunity. And why does that matter? Because talent is distributed evenly across the population, in all likelihood. Why wouldn't it be, right? And if talent's evenly distributed and you see gaps in opportunity, that means we're maybe missing the best coder ever to walk the earth. Might be living in rural Idaho, and we don't even know that person's there because they have never been given an opportunity to touch a keyboard or to give it a try. And so the concept of equity, the gains from equity, is that we're leaving talent on the table. When opportunities aren't even, talent is regularly left on the table, and we can't afford that. We're a nation that needs a growing and higher quality labor force. We need increased productivity to ensure that the pie for the next generation, the economic pie, is larger than the one we inherited. So, the point of writing that paper is to say, closing these gaps is not simply about fairness. Closing those gaps is about the economic well-being of our society. And that is something that is easy, I think, for all of us to commit to. We need to do that, which is our responsibility to the next generation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. By many
Thank you.
By many traditional measures, GDP and unemployment, the economy is doing well. You talked about vibe earlier, right? There's still a sense among many people, although maybe consumer sentiment is improving, there's still a sense among many of us that the economy doesn't work for all of us. And housing and childcare, unaffordable middle-class jobs are often inaccessible without a very expensive college education. How do you reconcile those two views of the economy? Whether is the economy booming? Is the economy busting?
So, one thing that I think I find helpful, and when you talk with people and you dig in, you can see this. So last year, it didn't feel like it was working anywhere, right? Even in the basic thing, like my gentleman who was at the retail outlet, he's working his jobs, he's making better money, and he still doesn't get to do what he wants to do, and he still feels like he's on that treadmill. Right now, I do feel like people are stepping off the treadmill a little bit, and just as they walk, they gain ground. They're not on that treadmill. But it doesn't mean, and that's what we call the cyclical part of the economy, right? Cyclically, we're getting in a better place. The inflation rate's coming down, things are getting better, we're better off. What's still hard, though, is we face these structural things about how the economy works that need treatment. And we spent a lot of time at the roundtable that I had this morning with business leaders talking about things like, how do we create an ecosystem? These are things that business leaders brought up to me. The ecosystem that says, okay, I can offer a job, I can offer training. Where's the workforce housing that makes that equation complete? So if my hiring barrier isn't how much I can pay, or I can't, or is the worker skilled, it's can they afford to live near the place that I'm offering the work, well then that's a barrier that will take a public-private community partnership to create the right ecosystem. And those are challenges that we haven't had to, they were there before the pandemic, but now the pandemic and the post-pandemic recovery has put a bright spotlight on them. And that's not something that's just here in San Diego. That's anywhere you go. In the 12th district, I have 9 states in the western United States, and I travel across the world and across the United States. I see the same problems in same places. Communities everywhere are struggling with, how do we make sure we have enough housing for our populations? How do we make sure that housing is at price points where various parts of the workforce can afford it? How do we get the right skills to the right places? The reason I focus these are the jobs I have. I have one tool, the interest rate, and I have two responsibilities, full employment and price stability. It's a narrow lane, but it's an important lane. The reason it's so important is that none of those things you just mentioned and we just talked about, that solve people's feeling the economy doesn't work for them, are even on the radar when inflation's 7%. They just aren't even talked about. They get swept aside while people frantically try to keep up. Now, as inflation's coming down, we can start to bring those things back to the forefront, and I can turn the job then back to you all who are working in localities and communities and states, and our fiscal agent folks in Congress and in state legislatures to really take on this other work, which is we're through the pandemic, the worst of the inflation surge is behind us. Okay, now what do we do next?
Speaking of what we can do next and what we can do locally, as Chairwoman Vargas mentioned, San Diego's really big. It's the 5th largest county in America. 1% exactly of all Americans live here in San Diego County, and it's incredibly diverse. What can we do here to make our economy stronger, more resilient, more equitable? What can policymakers, businesses, educational institutions, nonprofits, what can we all do locally to improve our economy?
So one thing that I see, and I see this all over when I travel the district, is just what we're doing here. Come together, talk, learn from each other. You have an opportunity to meet people who don't work in your industry or business, because ultimately what I see in any of the successful communities that solve problems is you get right to the heart. It takes partnerships. It is very challenging for the government alone to do something, whether it's the local, state, or federal government, or just businesses alone to do something, or community groups alone to do something. You have to build these partnerships and say, collectively, what do we do? The second thing that I think is really important, and I learned this in my own organization, I have a lot of ideas. I've stopped saying I have a lot of good ideas. I just say I have a lot of ideas about what we can do. And then but what's really important is you have to pick 2 or 3 to all swim in the same direction to say, okay, what are we going to accomplish? And I think we probably don't do enough of that in our communities to say, oh, we have all these leaders here. What 2 or 3 things are we going to put all of our weight behind collectively, because they're the most pressing things to do? So those are just some basic things. I will say this, though, and I told you this when we were having a chat before for this event. I live in Oakland, California. I love Oakland, California. I moved there in 1996, and I'll be honest with you, I came from Missouri. Missouri's great, but I walked into Oakland, and I turned to my wife, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm home. And why did I love it? I loved it because it's diverse, it's vibrant, you can meet different kinds of people, etc., and they have one thing in common. They love Oakland. And their love of Oakland means they're going to try. Now, we get a beating in the press, and some of it is probably relevant and deserved, but I still love it. But when I want to think about how to make Oakland better, you know where I come? San Diego. I'm not kidding. I come to San Diego, and I meet with people who are doing workforce housing, or I met with someone who's working with the criminal justice system, for my Zip Code Economies podcast, to move people as they move out of incarceration into jobs. And I said, how do we do that? How do we think about that? So I talk to people here in San Diego, because you do have that same thing. You have that thing where people who live in San Diego are proud to live in San Diego. You recognize all the problems you have and you want to make it better, but you did it, guys. You're proud, right? So I think capitalize on that, put your things together. And one of the things we're thinking about in the Fed, and one of the powers we have, is to convene. And our community development group and our regional executives that have a footprint all over the 9 western states, we're meeting people like you all over, Salt Lake City, Boise, Idaho, outside of Portland, and everybody's thinking about the same problems, but we can convene all of you to share with each other how you're thinking about things and learning, and the lessons are going to be the same. Align on some strategic goals and do partnerships with public, private, and community to really get the job done. So thank you.
You mentioned your podcast, Zip Code Economies, which I encourage everybody to get out your phone now and subscribe to. If you think I can't subscribe to a podcast by an economist, it's too arcane, that's not the way it is. One of the things
That is how people think about it, though, until you sell it.
Well, I'm sure that people are afraid, but it really is very accessible. And there is one great episode where you interviewed two twins who worked with reality changers here in
San Diego.
And cheers for reality changers. And it's a wonderful podcast. I encourage people to listen to it. You also mentioned having 2 or 3 ideas, and back in the green room, you mentioned that you had 2 or 3 messages for your colleagues, and I wonder if you could share them with this audience.
So what happened is every year we bring in our new board members. So we have boards of directors in all of our offices. So the San Francisco Fed has a head office in San Francisco, a branch office in LA, a branch office in Salt Lake, branch office in Portland, and a branch office in Seattle. And that was original from 1913 to ensure that we have these 9 western states and we have to cover a vast territory. So the Salt Lake branch covers Idaho and parts of Nevada and Arizona, and then LA covers Nevada and Arizona, and there's all these different groups are linked together. And we have Hawaii and Alaska, so we have then these board of directors members, and then we also have councils. We have an economic advisory council, a community advisory council, and a community depository institution advisory council, which we never say that whole word, we always say CDAC. These folks, these new members, all came to the bank this week, Wednesday and Thursday, and all of our board and council members, the whole full teams came, and we introduced them to what we do at the Fed and why their service to us is so important. And I said, you're going to hear a lot of things over the next 2 days, but I want you to remember 3 things. There's only 3 things that are really important when you start your service. And I think these are 3 things that I want all of you to remember about what the Fed is like. So the first thing is that the economy is about people. So we are not simply looking at the data and aggregate numbers and calculating models and looking at empirical work. We have that. We absolutely use that. But the thing that you always have to go back to is that the economy is about people. And you have to be out talking to people, business leaders, worker groups, community groups, civic leaders, if you're going to understand the lived economy. That's why I spend time at retail outlets asking people questions. While it's a small data collection project that I do, it actually gives me the lived experience of the people. And that's why I have teams of people working at the San Francisco Fed who are about collecting this qualitative information that makes such a difference in how we can do our best work. The second thing to remember is that data are plural. Data is not a point. It's not 6 points. It is plural. And it's really like a pointillistic painting. If you think about a painting that's pointillistic, if you've never seen one, it's 1,000,000 dots that make a picture that if you back really far away from it, you see only as a painting. But when you get up close, you realize that painting is made of all those little dots. And the artist had the patience and fortitude and persistence to ensure that all of the dots were made well, lined up, and gave the painting the depth that it has when you look at it from afar. The discipline that we need if we work at the Fed is to remember the economy and those data points. That's a pointillistic painting. And if we miss whole swaths of dot because we think we got it from afar, we will miss including lenses and voices that matter to us. And that brings me to the third thing that's important. Every voice, every lens, every perspective matters. Everyone. And so we need to be making sure that we're out there talking to people. So I spend time in Alaska, Hawaii, rural Idaho, San Diego, downtown Oakland, East Palo Alto. Every state in the district we are going, and we're going to not just a community, not the fly-in city, but the communities that also make up the fabric of those locations. And my colleagues, the beauty of the Federal Reserve System in 1913 is that the people who put this together, they put a group in Washington, the Board of Governors, and then they recognized the importance of knowing information from the communities that we're meant to serve. And they said, we're going to have 12 regional feds, and those regional fed presidents and their teams, apart from their daily responsibilities to do payments and banking and monetary policy, we're going to have them out there actually collecting information from the very people who are affected by our policies. And that has been a durable and important component of what the Federal Reserve banks do. And it's one of the reasons I love my job so much, because ultimately you only make good policy if you're out there. So the economy is about people, data are plural, every voice, every lens, every perspective matters. You guys are so kind.
You and I are similar in that when we go shopping, we pester people with questions. And I do that too. In fact, every restaurant I've been to recently, and particularly like fast casual places, I always ask, hey, do you mind me asking, what's the starting salary here?
Yes.
And the dollars number I always get is 16 and something cents. So that's within $1 of minimum wage. We have this $20 minimum wage in fast food coming, a $25 minimum wage, which you heard about in the Business Roundtable this morning for healthcare workers. Have you thought at all about kind of what do you expect what kind of impact do you expect that to have? Is that going to contribute to inflation here in California? Is it going to reduce overall employment? Do you have any thoughts?
So this has been a long studied economic topic, and the minimum wages has been long thought about by economists and not just policymakers, like economists trying to figure out what the impact of the minimum wage is. And it really depends, right? When the minimum wage is raised, who it's raised for, whether the communities or the firms can bear it, et cetera. So I think there is no clear definitive answer about whether it reduces employment or changes inflation. I don't think there's the indefinitiveness there. And there's a big debate about whether it's better or not as good as just putting an earned income tax credit on. So if you get to the economics of it, you don't get a compelling answer. The minimum wage, and I'll just say it, is a social tool, right? For most of us, it's about not finding it very comfortable to think that people work a full-time job and can't afford to buy the gas to get there or feed their families. And that's what ultimately we have to decide as societies. And the Fed doesn't play a role in that. It's just what we have to decide as societies. What can we bear? And then what firms have to do is decide, okay, at that price point, do I need to hire fewer workers and invest in more technology? Do I need to change the equation? Do I need to hire different people? And ultimately, those things will work themselves out. But if you look to the economics to compel you on the minimum wage, you would find that there's just a range of views and a range of findings, and it depends on what year you studied it. If you look at the reasons people often vote for the minimum wage, or in the surveys what people say about the minimum wage, it really is that they find it extraordinarily uncomfortable to repeatedly be confronted with the fact that people who are doing their jobs and doing everything the way they should cannot afford the basic things of living: transportation, housing, and food. And that's just hard.
Thanks. For those of us who don't get to go to the Federal Open Market Committee and cast a vote, could you tell us a little about how that decision-making works? You said something that was kind of surprising when we were meeting with the students earlier about it.
Sure. So this is it feels like it's all behind the scenes, right? Because the meetings are closed door. So let me tell you the things that I can. They're all confidential, so I can't share the details of what we do, but I can share the thing that I think it was so meaningful to me the first time I went to the FOMC. I went as a staff person. You're only allowed a limited staff too, and so as people know. But what is really remarkable, and I think it's one of the main reasons I love the Fed so much, is the independence that we have is given to us by Congress, is cherished and closely built, right? We build it. And the way we build it, there are many ways we build it. There are many ways we earn it, basically, the right to be independent, the importance of being independent. One of those ways is the FOMC is a big room. And all of us live in society. So every FOMC participant lives in society, lives in their communities. When we cross a door, it's much like that door. You open big double doors, you cross a threshold. And once people cross that threshold, there is never a mention, not one, of politics, of issues that would be politicized. What we talk about is the economy, our goals, our mandated goals of full employment, price stability, what we need to do, and we fiercely debate and discuss with big differences in how people see things, one from the way they bring the information and where their communities are, and then we come to a collective decision. And so it really is exactly what you would hope for if you were an American, is people are doing the job they were asked to do without the noise of thinking about politics or any other thing that they have on their minds. And I think that's a really cool thing. The thing that I told you that is really important is I've come on as a voting member this year. And while that is true, I'm a voting member, Reserve Bank presidents rotate, that's actually not meaningful from the way the FOMC works. The 12 Reserve Bank presidents rotate their voting, but every one of us is as meaningful as a voter or not a voter. It doesn't matter. We build our influence and our reputation based on evidence, what we bring to the table, how we reason the arguments, and what that tells you ultimately is that the FOMC is a construct where the best idea wins, right? And the best idea is the product of the collective membership, debating, discussing, and deciding what are we going to do for the American people. You know, at the front of our bank in San Francisco, at the head office, we have a sign. I put it up the day I became president. It says, it's like a touchstone. That's why I keep putting my hand up. It says, our work serves every American and countless global citizens. And when the FOMC comes in, I feel like we have that touchstone, even though it's not there. They have Latin words on the wall. But it really is, our work serves every American and countless global citizens, and we take that responsibility very seriously, and that's how we do our business, voting or not.
I love that. I am going to be looking at some of the questions that have come
Sure.
in, so when I look at my phone, don't think that I'm ignoring you.
I
but
won't.
the last question I'll ask you is whether you could talk about your personal process for decision-making,
Sure.
and particularly those 3 points.
I can,
Yeah.
yes, okay. So I was saying to the students, by the way, Rick said it, I just give a big pitch for this. So I met some students here this morning. I did the business roundtable, then I went to meet with students. Boy, we are lucky. Because these students, they were impressive, they asked thoughtful questions, very well considered, and just in dialogue. And the thing I always like when I meet young people is that I see the hope in their eyes. But what I love even more is when I see the hope in the practice. When they have the idealism and the hope, but they put it with the skills and the wherewithal and the thought process and asking hard questions and challenging. So if you ever need inspiration, just ask for a meeting with 10 or 15 students here, or anywhere probably, but definitely here, and you'll see what I saw, and I walked away feeling terrific. But one of the students asked me about, how do I think about things? How do I think about policy? And the very first day I became president, I was giving a town hall for the bank, and someone asked me, well, how are you going to make policy? That's really hard. And I said, well, and I have stickers now. I don't even know if I have any more with me, but I made them into stickers because I want everybody to know sort of this is a life thing you could use too. But here's how I make policy. I'm voraciously curious. Voraciously curious. I want to look at everything, talk to anybody I can, look at the models, read history, put it together, figure it out. When I get to the meeting, I'm confident about the decision I've made because, one, it's so important, I better be thoughtful and confident, but also because I've done all the homework. And then the day I make the decision, I'm humble. Humble about what have I missed, what can I learn tomorrow, and I go back to voraciously curious. And this virtuous cycle of be curious, be confident, be humble is how I make policy, and that's what I put on the sticker. And when I told the students, I said, no matter where you go, if you use those 3 things, you're going to be successful.
I love that. we're going to go on to some questions from the audience.
Oh, terrific. I love audience
So
questions.
one of the first questions is, 2024 may be a critical year for the commercial property market. To what extent will this affect regional and local economies and banks?
Sure, that's a terrific question, certainly on the mind of many, many people. So it is true, just for those who don't follow commercial real estate markets, that commercial real estate, much of it is repricing, refinancing this year, right? Because when people, leasers, owners, et cetera, found that they were, that interest rates were going to rise, they locked in low interest rates, but many commercial interest rates for commercial properties are on 3-year cycles. So now the refinancing is coming, and you have to redo it, and so you redo it, but now you're at higher interest rates. And so that's if you hear people say the reckoning, that's the reckoning, right? There'll be this reckoning. Now, that is going to be something that has to be gone through. So what can you say in the back of your mind to say, okay, how bad will that be? Well, let me offer some things. So commercial real estate is a big word that covers a lot of diverse sectors. Not all commercial real estate is the same. So you can break it into multifamily housing, warehouse and storage space, and office space. But even office space has to be broken down into city office space, which is where a lot of the workers left, and suburban office space, which is doctors, lawyers, title insurance companies, you name it, and they're fully in person. So they're still there. So that space in the suburbs and in places where you're really filling it with those kinds of in-person service providers, that's not at risk. And industrial warehousing is booming. And multifamily we have too few units, so that's not as at risk. So what's really problematic is this downtown office space. And so then downtown office space, well, certainly regional banks have some skin in those games, but they're not the big investors in those spaces. Those are usually conglomerated investment pools. They have a variety of different investors, and they will have to find another method of funding themselves. And so we had a commercial real estate roundtable late last year, and I asked people, we had private equity firms and commercial real estate owners and leasers, banks, and what we heard in that, now I'm going to narrow it down to this office property, since that's where the worrisome pieces are, is that these folks have known this. The reckoning's not a surprise. It's been being planned for. People know it's coming, and they've started triaging. So there are certain properties, if you've got Class C office space, then you're probably trying to figure out how to lease that to doctors, lawyers, other people. Say, move closer, Class C is available, we don't have the competition for it. If you have Class A space, well, it's beautiful, and you can find different, people. So in downtown San Francisco, where people say the end of the world has come, especially if they don't live there, we did have big companies you've heard of move out in the tech space, and then AI is moving in. So, people do come when that space is available and the price point is right. So the real piece of the puzzle that's in trouble is that Class B space, where it's not new, it's not that attractive, it's not going to attract the new techie people. It would use a lot of investment, and there's so much Class A sitting there, why would you do it? And it's too expensive or big for the smaller office places, so that will be the place. And then some of the owners or leasers are saying, well, I'll just take it to ground. And I don't know that they always mean tear it down. They mean turn the lights off and wait for the times to be better, and they can do that. And then there are other private equity firms are like, at some point the price point is going to be sufficiently good that I can swoop in. So from the Fed's perspective, what I worry about, or as a policymaker, what I worry about, or what I think about, I wouldn't even say worry, I would say what I think about on commercial real estate is I want to understand what the drag on the economy will be. And so I'm focused on that. And I also want to understand what the stress on the banks will be. And so we're monitoring that, thinking about that, regularly talking to all the entities. And everybody knows it's coming. And they've been working and planning for it. So now it's just, as it starts to go through and digest, it's about how does it shape up for any particular firm.
Yeah, that's helpful, thanks. Do you think that a solution to the economic gaps across the country can be solved by increasing access to higher education? There seems to be a shift in employers relying more on soft skills or maybe on a skills-based hiring rather than degrees and specific job training.
We were just having this conversation earlier today in the roundtable, and we were also having this conversation. I've been doing various events and outreach events, and even in San Francisco, and we're having this exact conversation about what are firms doing. So firms have known for, I mean, it's been in conversation for like the last 4 or 5 years. Do we really need to wait for a person to get a 4-year degree only to provide them on-the-job training or ask them to go get the certificate when we need very specialized skills? Or could we just take them out of high school and give them this training? So that gets talked about a lot, but nothing gets done much about it. But the shortage of workers has put a highlight on that. And so now we're hearing more firms in all kinds of sectors, a wide range of sectors, just hiring and running people through certificate programs and running through people through training programs. And then that's caused a surge in interest among community colleges in thinking about how can we provide those training certificates. And so there's a college in Utah, University of Utah, Utah Valley University, where they were a community college, and now they also offer 4-year degrees. They're just looking for, okay, what do these need, and what skill sets can we get and get people into jobs quickly? So I think that what we're seeing is a transformation. That transformation is far from complete. It's going to require really a mindset shift. Employers are going to have to not only desire to do skill-based training, but actually push it down into the organization so that people realize you don't always need the college degree signal if you've got the skills. But then you have to have skills-based hiring metrics and other things, and that has a chance to really equalize things, but we're not there yet, but we have to work on it. And I'm hearing that. Firms are working on that. On the other side, we have to think about how do we get more certificate programs and more training programs, more what I would call divisible educational opportunities, where you go and maybe you get a 6-month certificate, you work, you say, okay, now I can take a year and I get a year-long training program, but we don't really have that much infrastructure for this. And so right now, I think we're in that transition period, but it's like part of the conversation. Here, much less, I've long been a proponent of college because you can look at the data that lifts up, but someone asked me, wouldn't you be for apprentice programs? And I said, absolutely, if we had them. But if I tell, communities who are historically disadvantaged, go get a training program, there's like none available. So there's 2 choices. You can stop at high school or you can go to college. But if we can fill that gap, well, yes. And the important thing, and this is something else that I said, or that I believe, because I've been all over, it won't just be for people who can't afford college. It'll be for people who don't want to be in college. And there are a lot of those people who don't come from disadvantaged backgrounds. They just want to do something different. They want to work in different things, and they don't want 4 years to get there. And so I think we have to, that's why I say it's a mindset shift. We have to change our mindset to get people what they need and when they need it.
Yeah, one of the things that you talked about just now, but also earlier in the business roundtable, was that it's not just about at the very top level of a CEO saying, we're going to hire people without bachelor's degrees now. It's employment is competitive, and there's 2 people, and often it's tempting to just pick the one. Often it's just tempting to pick the one that's got the degree. And one of the things that I've talked about with businesses, particularly when I was at the Workforce Partnership, was if somebody has acquired those skills without the benefit of a degree, often that's an indicator that they're more of a self-starter, that there's somebody who have overcome often obstacles to get those skills. And that's why it's so important to hire people like that.
Well, I think one of the ways that we make sure that we are doing it effectively and in a way that has sticking power, staying power, is if we're saying we're going to do skills-based hiring, then let's have skills-based metrics. And that's what I'm seeing missing in many organizations. They say, okay, we're going to go do skills-based hiring, and it doesn't last beyond a tight labor market. But if it is embedded into the hiring manual, into the assessment, papers, and you basically have the interviewers asking skill-based questions, then you actually have a chance for that living past just the tight labor market. So, these are things that, again, I just want to be very clear. The Fed plays no role in these things. I don't have any tools for these types of things. So why do I talk about them? Why am I even willing to talk about them? It's because we have a mandate of full employment. And in order to achieve full employment and really think about what that means, we have to have a workforce. And in order for the workforce needs, the demand for workers to be met without being inflationary, we have to have a workforce that could match it. So when people ask me, what do you think we need to have demand and supply come together? Well, I can say we can keep raising the interest rate to make sure demand doesn't outstrip supply, but we can also work on the supply part. I can't control that, but I can definitely identify where the gaps are.
That's great. I'll ask you one last question, and then we'll send people off to break. And you've talked about your vision of the San Francisco Fed as a public service organization. And I just wanted to know if there was any examples you'd like to share, or kind of how you realize that vision of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank being a public service organization.
Actually, it's a premier public service organization. And the reason I say that is that we are in public service, and I think everyone who works at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco or any Federal Reserve in the system understands we are in public service. But you're absolutely right. When I took the job as president, and in my interview many interviews, to get the job, they asked me, what's your vision? Why do you want this job? And I said, the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco and Federal Reserves across the system, we have all the tools and capabilities. We're mission-driven, we're earnest, we are sophisticated, we're well-trained. We want to put all of that to being really a premier public service organization, the best in public service. And what that means is not simply doing our job well. It's actually figuring out how to continually do it better and to serve more people and to meet people where they are and source more information and build trust. Ultimately, someone asked me, what's your most important tool? And I think they wanted me to say the Fed funds rate. But I said, trust. Public trust in our ability to do our work and our willingness to meet our commitments is our most important tool. If people, and I'll give you an example of that from last year. If people believe when we say we are going to bring inflation down to 2%, and they believe it, well, then they buy into it. And then they say, okay, inflation is going to come down. And if you look at inflation expectations for consumers, you see the more, as we speak, and then they get the data, they see inflation coming back down. The inflation expectations have just come down. So that's a measure of our credibility. And our credibility can only thrive when trust is high. And so that's what being a premier public service organization means to me. It's ensuring that we build as much trust as possible. We talk to people who don't understand or even agree with us, and we do it with openness, transparency, and respect for their views and their questions. And that's what my team and I strive to do every day.
President Mary Daly, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have a short break. Also, that did not mean to drop a mic. We're going to have a short break, and before we go, if there's a Rodney Colburn, they've lost their card, so find Lauren. Sure. All right, we're on a little break, and we'll be back here in 5 minutes. Credit card. Oh, I thought they said car. Hey, everybody, we can, if people can find their seats again. Is there a bell? Ding. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Is that coming through the speakers? Can we have everybody come and take their seats, please? Okay, everyone. We are really fortunate to have the next portion of this event is a panel led by Kara Green, who is President and Executive Director of the Center on Policy Initiatives. CPI is, quote, the most fabulous research and action organization serving working families. Did I get that right, Karen? All right, yeah. Carol Kim she'll be interviewing Carol Kim and Jerry Sanders. Carol Kim is business manager of the San Diego County Building and Construction Trades Council and CEO of the SDBTC Family Housing Corporation. Jerry Sanders is the former police chief, mayor, head of United Way, and the Red Cross, and I ran out of room to write all of his titles, but he needs no introduction, so Kira, take it away.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Jerry and Carol, for being here. One of my goals in starting out this panel was to each of you represents a sector and an organization that a lot of people really think they know, but I want to make sure that they do. So could you take, say, 3 to 5 minutes, describe your members, your constituents, and I know it's pretty diverse, right? There's a lot of different types of people. So maybe just giving us a sense of who do you think about as you're talking about this work today? And tell us a little bit about how they're coming into 2024.
Well, so I am the business manager of the San Diego County Building and Construction Trades Council, and a lot of people are like, what does even that mean, business manager? It's a nonsense title in some ways. It's the chief executive, but my organization represents all the construction unions in the county. So we represent unionized construction workers, and we fight for and advocate for them. We negotiate contracts on large projects, and basically they're project labor agreements, which are collective bargaining agreements. We represent about 35,000 members here in San Diego County, and I'm also the vice president, one of the vice presidents of the San Diego and Imperial County Labor Council. And so when I think about who I represent, I don't represent just construction workers. I also happen to represent a lot of other workers as well, which are in unions. There are something like 300,000 of them in that council, and I often say we fight for union and non-union workers alike, because the idea is to support and uplift all of them so that we can all be doing better.
Thank you. I'm Jerry. I'm with the Chamber of Commerce. We're the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest chamber on the West Coast, actually, in terms of number of members. We've got over 2,000 members, and they represent from USD to Qualcomm to probably your dry cleaner on the corner to this very smallest businesses in San Diego. We also have labor participation at the chamber. Several of the labor unions belong to the chamber, and we think that's important. That hasn't always been that way, but we know that if we're going to get big things done in San Diego, that we're going to be working with labor, and it's important to have them in on some of the decision-making processes as we start thinking about where the chamber's going to go on some of these. We really advocate for business. We advocate for policy, both locally at the city and the county and some of the other cities, but we also advocate on a statewide basis. We advocate in Washington, D.C., and then we also advocate in Mexico and Mexico City. We have many of our members are actually in northern Baja and Tijuana, manufacturing concerns, big organizations, and we work really hard on border infrastructure and trade issues and really talk about what a rich environment we have with 7 million people living in the Cali Baja region between San Diego County and Tijuana. So it's a huge region, and we really need to talk about it because it gets lost in a lot of the crap that goes on in Washington, D.C. right now. And people don't realize how close we are, the ties that we have, and the importance of our two economies because they're completely intertwined. Every job in